طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We continue with we have seen last time the inner query, okay, where we said you have to combine, okay, two tables into one table that will give you some specific data based on the attribute you are going to include. Okay, here we talk about the inner join will be done from okay, table 1, inner join table 2, and you have to specify the combination on some specific attribute, that is equality attribute between the attribute in table 1 should equals to table 2 columns or attribute. In that manner you will do the join. When we said you join, you are going to write down all the attribute of the first table with all the attribute of the second table if that specific attribute is equals between table 1 and table 2, and this is what you are going to select from. Here we talk about from, okay, instead of having only one table, we are having a big table which has all the employee attribute plus all the department attribute if the department number in employee is equal to department number in department, in order to gather or to form that tuple which has all those attributes. This is with the inner join, and we have seen the example. The next part of this, which is related to the aggregate function. When you talk about aggregate function, okay, these aggregate function are used to summarize information from tuples into single tuple summary. Okay, we use grouping. We said we do have a grouping to create subgroups of tuples before we summarize the output. Okay, and usually you will have, for instance, those grouping in order to look. We're going to see some example that will help you to have a nice looking output where you group the result based on some specific criteria instead of having, let's say, scattered output everywhere, okay, and mixed output. You will have some specific nice looking output. Also, a number of built-in aggregate function exists in SQL. We do have a count, sum, max, mean, and average. Okay. Now, in terms of those functions, you have to be careful, Shabab. Those functions should be used in the select clause or in having clause. Never use those count, max, sum, mean, max, average in any place except after select or after having clause. Okay.
Teacher, what's having clause?
We're going to see later what is having with the example. Okay, guys. For instance, here
not from, not
only in after select or after having. Okay, this is where we are going to use those aggregate. They are called aggregate function. That means they will connect and they will calculate some specific value. It is like predetermined function. Instead of accounting by yourself the number of tuples or a number of rows in a table, you use just use count, and automatically it gives you the count. If you want to use a maximum of value in column, instead of going through each value and comparing and writing your algorithm for that, it is pre-built function. You have max, you have mean, you have average. It's very nice pre-built function. Well, it's called aggregate function. Okay, and you can apply them to a set or multi-set of numeric value, and it will return respectively. For instance, the sum, or the maximum, or the minimum, or the average, which is the means of the values. Okay, as we mentioned, those functions can be used in the select clause or in having clause. Okay, we're going to talk about having later. Here we talk, this is an example. If you are asked to find the sum of the salaries of all employees, the maximum salary, minimum salary, and the average salary. So where are you going to use those functions? Okay, we are writing down select. We said we have to put them after select. We just write down sum function, and we want to do the summation of which attribute? Salary. it will go to the column of salary and it will add, do the summation of all the salary. Max salary, it will go to the column where you do have salary and it will gives you, returns to you the maximum salary. Mean, it will give you the minimum salary. The average, it will calculate for you the average salary. Okay, so these are very helpful in calculating such information. If you can see here, it will return the summary of the salary, the maximum, minimum, and the average salary from the employee. This is another example. It says find the sum of the salaries of all employees of the research department. Here we are specifying research department, as well the maximum salary, minimum, average salary in this department. Here, if you can see here, we didn't include any condition. We didn't include the where. We said just select, give me all this information from the employee. Now we are interested to get this information for that specific department, for the research department. So what you can do, we are using here, we are joining between select, so between the employee and the department on DNOD number. That means we are creating a table that is the result of join between employee table and department table with where we do have the DNOD number. You will have a big table with a longer tuples with all attribute of employee plus all attribute of department, where we do have the DNO equals D number. Then from that big table, we are going to check. Whenever we do have D name equals research, we return some salary, max salary, mean salary, and average salary. Okay, so this is one way of using those function, aggregate function, after the select statement.
Doctor,
now,
can you explain the from again, the composite one?
From, as I mentioned previously, you go to the employee table. Okay. We do have employee table. Okay, this is our employee table. And this is our department table. Okay. What we are going to create? We are going to create from these two tables one table as a result. Because of that join, we are going to do employee join department, where we do have DNO equals D number. إيش معناه? We are going to create, it's like we are going to combine the tuples of employee and the tuples of department, where we do find DNO in employee equals to D number in department. I will go to the first DNO 5 and see the first DN number 5. It is equals. That means I will have a big table, a big tuple, where I will have all this data plus all this data on the same row. Imagine that I will take these rows and put it here. That means I will add extra attribute, D name, D number, manager SSN, manager start date in here. But it will not be called employee, it will be called employee department join. Whenever we do have this condition. Okay? That means this tuple will be combined with this because it is 5. It will not be combined to 4 because D number is different from DNO. And I will do the same thing. That means I will create a bigger table with all attribute of employee plus all attribute of department with one condition. If the DNO is equals to 5, معناه I will have John B. Smith 1, 2, 3 and the birth date and so. And research D number 5, manager SS and this value, manager start date this value. Why? Because I have done join on this condition, because here 5 is equals to 5. But I will never have, for instance, John B. Smith DNO 5 will combine with this information, administration for, and this manager and start date, because the D number is different from DNO. Clear?
Victor,
Now,
the on statement, ON.
now,
does it have other uses than with the join?
no, it is used only in join.
Okay.
Okay. Here we are doing join. It's like you define. It's like with conditions. Like you are telling the DBMS to create this big table, okay, which is the combination of employee and department. If we do have the NO equals to the number only. If the NO from employee is different from the number, I will not have that big tuple or a big row. Okay, I will have that big row that contains all attribute of employee plus department. If we do have the equivalence between the NO and the number in both employee department. Whenever I do find department number in employee equals to department number in department, I will create one big row that will contain all the attributes of employee plus all attributes of department. Okay? So using the aggregate function, okay, here we are creating big table, okay, as a result of this join. Then I will select, here we are creating salary, some salary, maximum, minimum, average from that big table, which is the result of join. Okay, where we do have dynamic order research. Now we are interested only in the department research department, because here it says calculate the sum and the maximum, minimum employee of the research department. That's why we added this extra condition. Okay. Here it says retrieve the total number of employees in the company. We want to know the number of what? Oh, the employees in that specific database. So what we replace asterisk. We said select count, and you do have that star from employee. So it will go and تحسب لكم هنا number of rows. It go to the employee table and count the number of rows, number of tuples. This will be returned because you need to get the number of employees by calculating or the number of rows you do have within your employee table. Okay, Shabab? نعم.
So this counts all the rows of the employee table, regardless.
Yes, it will return the number of rows in the employee table as a result of the execution of this statement. Clear, Shabab? We are counting the number of rows. The asterisk means each row will be counted.
But Doctor, is this the only way to do it, or you can just write any attributes inside?
No, here we are counting. We are asked to how can you calculate the number of employees based on what? So you will calculate the number of employees in the company database based on the number of rows, the number of entry you do have in the employee table.
So, Doctor, we always have to put a star. We can't put, like, for example, an attribute like salary or something.
Oh, employee name, for example.
What do you put here?
Name.
Yeah.
Maybe.
How can you count? You are counting employee name. How can you count the employee name?
Wouldn't it do
of
the
course,
same
you can count. For instance, you can have, for instance, if you put, for instance, salary. Okay, let's put here instead select count salary. What it will do? It will count the number of salary you do have. How many salaries you do have? صح ولا لا?
Yeah.
But you might have salaries that are the same salary, for instance. It will be counted twice or 3 times.
So it doesn't count repetition.
Yes, but you can use distinct. You can use, for instance, inside select, okay, you can have, for instance, select count distinct salary. But the problem, if you put the distinct salary, معناه you will omit some entry. You will not count all the employees. If you do have 2 employees, 2 different employees who have the same salary, one of them will be not counted. معناه ما تعطيكم الإجابة صحيحة. Here we need to have the number of employees. To count exactly the number of employees, it is advisable to use the asterisk that will count the number of rows instead of going through the columns.
دكتور واضح. Just one more thing. Let's assume that some salaries are null, or there's no value for salary. Will it be counted as well?
Yes, they will be counted, of course, yes.
But only counted once if we put
yes, it will be, yes, the null will be counted once if you put distinct, for instance. But if you don't put distinct, they will be counted as much as they appear on your on that column, for instance. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Here we do have retrieve the total number of employees in the research department. Here we are adding extra. Here we didn't specify in which research which department through the whole employee, but here we are interested only in the department. So that's why you select count from employee department, where DNO equal the number and the name equal to research. That means if you go to the employee, okay, if you go to the employee table, if you see that, for instance, the department name of that specific employee is the research, okay, this is yes. If you can see here, DNO equals 5, because here we don't have, if we rely only on employee table, we don't have the name of the department, and we are asked to look for the research department, the number of employee who works for the research department. So here we are saying if DNO here 5 equals to the D number and D name equals to research. So the D name number 5 corresponds to D name research. I will return that one because on the 5 we have here only D number and we don't have research name or a department name which is equals to research. So we need to link the DNO to the department. So in order to get that research, if the research D name equals to research and DNO 5 equals to 5, count this tuple. If I go to here, DNO equals to 5, it's not equal, it is equal here to 4, and D name is not equal to research, I will not return this guy because it doesn't work for the department research, the department name which is equal to research and correspond to department number which is equals to 5. So that's why we need to
join?
Yeah, we could
do join for the table.
Say it again.
Do we do join for the two tables عشان we link them?
Not necessary to use the join, because here we didn't use any join. Here we are selecting count. We are counting the number of tuple from the employee. If and department here we are using both from. Okay. If where we do have, if you do have that DNO equals D number and D name equals to research. If you do have these conditions, I will return the number of tuples from employee.
But you could use join here, doctor, right?
No, we didn't use any. Where can you see join? Where is join?
I said if we use join, it would work, right?
Yes, of course. Yes, it will work. Yes, of course.
Doctor, one more thing.
No.
Can we put like inside the parentheses of count, sum, max, min,
Where?
certain condition? So let's stick with count. If we put inside parentheses, for example,
here, inside here.
Yeah, salary greater than 6,000. Would that work? So it will count all the salaries that are greater than 6,000.
La, the condition should be put here in the where condition. The count will count only the number. To just give you a count, la maximum, la minimum. But the condition should be here. In where clause. You should put the condition in where.
طب دكتور,
Now,
what's more optimal, to use the where condition or to do the join between the tables? And what's more optimal for the program?
it is different شباب. Join is one thing, where is one thing. Join راح تكون في from after from. معناه join will gives you table instead of specifying employee table and department table. I can have one table that is the result of employee join with department on some specific attribute. This is the join. Join معناه تعطيكم table جديدة, which is the combination of two tables, for instance, based on some specific attribute that you will use it in a from. Like here we did have employee and department. We could have join between employee and department where we do have DNO equals D number. فقط. One big table.
Okay,
شباب, the join, diamond join is from. معناه it will create a new table, not inside the database, but as a result, where to look for. Okay, that select will be instead of from employee and department, will be from that big table. That is the result of the join between employee and department. Don't confuse between the join. Join, I said join is always inside the from. It will be after from. And you are specifying from where you are going to select this count. From where you are going to count, I will count it from the result of that join. Join is the result of joining to table on some specific attribute.
So if we count here, we will get two values. We will get the count from the employee and the count from the department. But if we join, we will only get one value.
No, not necessarily. No, not necessarily. It will count from employee. We are using department because we are using this the department name and department research. You remember what I said? I said that what you put in from, okay, whenever you specify any attribute within your SQL statement, that attribute should exist in some tables. And where do I specify that the name is in the name attribute is in the department? There is only one place, is from. But not necessarily it means that this count will be done on the employee and department. It will be done on employee, okay, and this department is used to specify that the name is from the department. We are telling the DBMS or the SQL compiler that executor, this D name can be searched in the, if you don't find that D name in employee, search for that D name in department. واضح شباب؟
So we want the research departments that exists both in the employee and in the department table.
لا. شوف هنا, retrieve the total number of employee in the research department. We are looking for any employee who works for the research department. We will count it as a result.
So we only use department to get the D name.
Barakallah fik. Now, D name and D number. This D number,
yes.
This attribute is in department. Okay? And null values discarded when aggregate function are applied. When you if you do have a value, when you do a summation, or you do minimum, maximum. If you do have a null value, you cannot count the null value as a maximum or minimum. So it will be discarded. We mentioned the asterisk. Now, yes, the count will work. This is the distinct, as I mentioned. You have distinct salary. You can use it. Here you can have, for instance, nested query. Okay, nested query. Select last name, first name from employee. Where, and here we do have select count the number from department where ESSN. If you can see here, you do have here a bracket and you do have here a bracket. هذه will return what? It will return the number of dependent. Okay, where SSN equals to ESSN. معناه this will give you a number. صح ولا لا؟ تعطيكم رقم. The number of dependent. Okay, for an employee. If the number of dependent of employee is greater or equals to 2, okay, معناه it will display last name and first name. إيش معناه؟ معناه it will print out all the employee اللي عندهم أكثر من أكثر or equals من أولاد 2. Anyone who has more than or equals 2 children, his name and first name will be displayed. And this is what we are doing here. We select, we count for each employee, for each SSN employee. If that SSN is equal to employee SSN, now you go to the child, and you do have, you remember, dependent. If you go to the dependent table, if you go back to the dependent table, you do have it here. Okay, if you can see in the dependent, we do have ESSN. If ESSN, معنى هذا, you can see here this guy ESSN, here this guy belongs to this employee, and this child belongs to this employee. This child is belongs to this employee. If you can hear, we do have this guy has the 3 children. معناه I will count, I will look for that 5555 employee, okay, and Franklin Wong, I will print out this guy, because this guy SSN 5555 that ends with 5555 is the same here as 555, and he has 3 children, which is greater or equals than 2. So I will display the name of this guy. And this is what we did basically in that specific query. Okay, we are going to count how many children that employee has, okay, it will be returned by this statement that I will have a number. If that number is greater or equals to 2, I will execute the last name. Just remember, when you have a nested query, always the nested one will be executed first. I will execute this first query, okay, and calculate. Here we'll talk about correlated nested query. ايش معنى correlated nested query؟ معناه in the nested query some attributes belong to the outer query. هذا اساسا هذا belongs to the employee table. صح ولا لا شباب؟
ايوه صح.
معناه this type of query is called nested. ايش معناه nested؟ معناه for each row of employee I will execute this statement. For each row I will go to the first row, execute this statement, verify if the count is greater than 2. If yes, I will return last name, first name. I will go to the next line, calculate the number of count the number of dependent for that specific SSN. If the number is less or no, it's not greater or equal to 2, I will not return last name and first name, and so on. Okay, so this is known as nested query. معناه ايش معنى nested query؟ معناه you will find some attribute in the nested query belongs to the parent query ولا to the outer query. نعم
doctor. So we will take the last name and the first name for all employees who have more than 2 children.
بارك الله. More or equal? لا, I would have greater or equal.
Yeah.
From 2 upwards. Okay, for each employee. Now comes the halving clause. We do have group by and halving clause. And sometimes when, in many cases, you want to apply the aggregate function to some specific subgroups, for instance, okay, of tuples in a relation, and that subgroup is based on some attribute value. Okay, for instance, let's say I want to just have an example here. For each department, retrieve the department number, the number of employee in the department, and their average salary. If you can see here, we are looking to the average salary and number of employee. That so means we are going to use aggregate function. It says for each department, retrieve the department name, select department number, the number of employees, we are going to use the count, their average salary, I'm going to use the average, okay, salary, aggregate function average, from employee, and group by DNO. Let's have a look at you can see here, this is the result. Group by DNO, which معناه? معناه for the department number 5, I do have its own count. How many people? I do have 4 people working in department number 5, and this is their average salary. For the department number 4, if you can see, the result has been grouped based on the DNO. Okay, and for each subgroup based on DNO, I will present DNO count and average. For the department 4, I do have 1, 2, 3, 4, for instance, 1, 2, 3. So this is the number of employees who work for that department 4, and this is their average salary. Department number 1, and you have count 1, and this is the average salary. Because I do have only 1 here, you do have that salary. That means it is very important. You are applying that aggregate function to that specific subgroup. You do subgrouping, you group, let's say the result, for instance, on DNO, I will have each DNO separately with the count and the average salary. That means each group, the partition, will consist of the tuples that have the same value for that attribute. Okay,
so
all the tuples.
So we got the average for each department.
Say it again.
We got the average salary for each department.
Yes, for average salary for each department. The number of employees who work for that department is counted also for each subgroup. So you are creating group or partition. Okay, and they do have the same attribute. All those employees that we have counted, they do have the same attribute, which is number 5. They work for the same department number here and here and here.
Does that mean that the DNO is similar to the key. It's the thing
No,
that
it's not a key. No, it's not key. It's just grouping. Only grouping as a result to execute the statement. Okay, to execute this statement, you will apply this statement, the NO, count, and average based on the NO, and what you will get something that is nice to see, for instance, as a result. Okay, that means here what we have here, we have the employee tuples have been partitioned or divided into groups. You can see here we do have, if you didn't have this group by, you will have something not presented in a well manner. What we did here, we took that employee table, we grouped all the employees who work for the same department into one group. Okay, that means group number 5, group number 4, group number 1, which represent people who work for that department, and we applied the count and average to each specific subgroup or partition.
The count of what?
Now,
the count of what?
The count is we are calculating the number of employee who works for number 5. This 1, 2, 3, 4. We do have 4 employee who works for number 5. For the NO 4, we do have 1, 2, 3. So we do have 3, and so on.
Look, sir,
okay?
The group by is instead of where, like instead of the condition, well, we can put both.
No. Where is a condition, Shabab? Where is a condition? Sure. A group is a way of grouping, just to group data. You are dividing your result. It's like you are dividing your table into groups based on this specific attribute. Then each group you will apply to each group. You will apply this aggregate function, like we did here. We applied count and we applied every salary only to this DNO 5. We group them. Okay.
We can put the condition before it. So.
Yes, of course you can have a condition. Of course you can have a condition and group them together. It depends of what you are looking for, Shabab. Okay, not necessarily to have the where condition, and not necessarily to omit it. Here you do have a where condition. We have select, from, where, and we do have group by. We are grouping them by P number and P name. Here we are saying having. Here we are introducing having. Having, as we say, you remember what we said? We said the aggregate function can be applied, okay, can be put in select or in having. Here we are saying having count, the number of that count greater than 2. Let's have a look at this example. Okay, what we are saying here. Here, if you can see here, we are grouping them based on P number, P name. Okay, if you look at P number, for instance, and P name. And we are going to check whether the number of PNO and hours, P number and P name, okay, is their count is greater than 2. Here, strictly greater. This ones, the number of rows that have P number, P name works on the same 1, 1. I do have only 2. Here I do have 1, 2, 3. This one will be selected because with the number of count of people, P number, P name, we do have more than 2. This will be omitted because I do have only 2 who are related to the P number. The project number, I have only 2 project number equals to 3. This will not be returned, and so on. This is after having condition, and this is what you get as a result. You can see here, I do have a P name product. Okay, product Y. I do have any product Y, product Y. I can have any product Y in this row. Okay, and I have returned how many rows or how many project in this project name. I do have product Y 1, 2, 3. So it will be returned. It have 3, 1. How many 1 in computerization? 1, 2, 3. That means this one will be selected. So I have here number 3 and so on. So what we are selecting, P name and count, like we did here, just P number and P name and count. Because here it has been omitted. We do have P number not shown. It should have here P number. Okay, We are showing only p name and count. That means here we are selecting p name and count with p number, of course. From project works on where we do have this condition, they will be grouped in p number and p name. We do have here p number and p name. Of course, we do have here, we don't have p number, p name, and it will be grouped on that one. And you will count the number of projects that are within that specific project name. Okay, having, as we mentioned, having. Okay, we are providing, for instance, another condition. If you can see here, we do have for each department that has more than 5 employees. Here we are adding like a condition: retrieve the department number and the number of its employees who are making more than 40,000, for instance. So in this case, what we are having here, for instance, okay, we are counting, we get the number and count the number of rows from department employee, where we do have this condition: when the number equals the NO and salary is greater than 40,000. And we do have here, you can see here, we do have another condition. And always, instead of using where condition, we are using having. Why? We can having, for instance, we are grouping, okay, our result based on the DNO. We verify whether that the number of rows based on the DNO is greater than 5. If it is the case, I will select the DNO. Okay, I will have that DNO, and I will verify that I do have this specific DNO, the number equals DNO, and salary greater than 40,000. And we do have this condition. Let's say we do have, no, we don't have the
between having where?
Now,
what's the difference between where and having?
Usually, the having will follow group by. I cannot use here where after group by. If you are going to use where, you are going to use where after the from. Okay, then you group it. But always when you do have, if you want to use that having, use it after group by, because having is related to the group by. One, as we mentioned here, for instance, having count greater than 3, it will return this one, for instance. Because what you do, just remember, when you use group by, you are dividing your employee table into sets of employees based on the DNO. Then you will apply the aggregate function. Okay, for each set based on the DNO, you will count the number of the result. For instance, I do have, okay, here for instance, count equals to 3. If this number is greater than 5, I will apply it. If I don't have that one, I will not return the DNO for that one. Okay, guys?
So having is basically only for aggregate functions?
Having, just having should follow the group by only. Don't use having if you don't have a group by. We are not going to use having. Okay, having, it will be used here. We are talking about having. We are using. Okay, we are going to apply this aggregate function on those DNO. Okay, to select those specific individual groups of tuples.
Always aggregate functions. Well, we can use any.
No, you can use anything. Not necessarily aggregate function. Okay, Shabab?
Yes.
Okay, we conclude our chapter. So these are the recap of what we have, summary of the SQL, what we have seen. So more inshallah, we're going to see